This show is brought to you by CloudBerry Lab, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup software. Visit www.cloudberrylab.com/tubblog for a very special listener offer and get started with CloudBerry Managed Backup for MSPs.
You're listening to Tub Talk, the podcast for IT business owners, with our featured conversation with Richard Tubb and Doug Hazelman of CloudBerry Labs. My name's Jeff Nicholson, and this podcast is all about helping you grow your IT business. In this episode, Richard talks with Doug Hazelman, a veteran of the IT consulting space and Vice President of Technical Marketing at CloudBerry Lab, a provider of cloud backup software. In this interview, you'll hear how CloudBerry's backup and data recovery platform can help MSPs protect their clients' data and help them keep it secure. This episode was recorded via a video call between Richard at home in Newcastle upon Tyne, England, and Doug in St. Petersburg, Florida. And now, without further ado, here's Richard Tubb talking to Doug Hazelman.
Hi everyone, Richard Tubb here with another interview, and today I'm joined by Doug Hazelman. Now, Doug is the Vice President of Technical Marketing at CloudBerry Lab in Florida. Easy for me to say. Now, CloudBerry Labs are the providers of cloud backup software built for cloud storage. With support for Amazon, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Storage, and many, many other recognizable cloud platforms. They are the #1 cross-platform cloud backup software. Now, as well as managing software for corporate and personal users, CloudBerry Lab also provide a managed backup service for IT solution providers, managed service providers, and that's what we're going to talk about predominantly here today. Doug himself is a veteran of the IT consulting space, having spent almost 10 years as chief evangelist at Veeam Software. His role is now VP at CloudBerry Labs, and it sees him focus on building a great community of enthusiasts and customers within the CloudBerry community. Not a bad job to have at all, Doug. Thanks for joining us there today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. And where do we find you in the world today?
So I am in St. Petersburg, Florida, where typically it's sunny, but the last 2 weeks it's been rainy. And so...
Well, let's dive straight in and let's talk about the role of MSPs in backup. So I'm a former MSP owner myself, and quite a few years ago. And traditionally, backup to me has been something where an SMB client might have had a tape drive on site, which they sometimes change, sometimes not so much. We've really moved away from that now. And for the most part, most of the MSPs that I come across are using cloud to backup. And I'm starting to hear the term backup as a service. So perhaps we could start off by looking at how does backup work in this new world of MSP offerings?
Well, I think any MSP worth their salt is going to want to offer backup to their customers. It's a critical component of any IT infrastructure, and there's multiple ways to go about it, as you mentioned. I kind of look at the history of backup software. You mentioned tape. Tape is still alive today. Don't get me wrong. There's still people using it, but what has happened over the last several years is it moved then to disk. So instead of backup to tape, you back up to disk. And what we're seeing now is backup to cloud. And one of the big reasons why is, if something happens to your customer, if something happens to their site and everything is at that site, including your backups, then you have no way to recover for them. So you want to get that data off site. And the cloud and cloud storage, all the advancements that have been made over the last several years is really the best way to get that data off site. It's much better than you going and exchanging tapes in the tape drive and taking them, to your home or somewhere else to store them. Is get the data up to the cloud. It's safe up there in the event of a disaster, and then allows you to recover your customers' data and get them back online much quicker.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the disaster recovery aspect of things shortly, but really I want to sort of talk some more at this stage about how you're going about educating MSPs on the opportunities for their business in backup. So there's still going to be a lot of clients out there, you say, using tape. Lots of MSPs that I know have really been late to the party, I'm going to be honest here, when it comes to moving to the cloud. So what does cloud backup look like in practical terms, and how do you at CloudBerry go about educating MSPs on that?
Yeah, so cloud backup takes many forms. Some backup providers have you backup data to their cloud, whether that's through an appliance that you put at the customer site, which then transfers to the data to their data center. That's the way it happens quite a bit. At CloudBerry, we've taken a different approach because we understand that not one size fits all. So from a cloud storage perspective, there's a lot of options in cloud storage. And those options mean different price points. Different price points mean different margin for MSPs. So what we allow managed service providers to do is, we call it bring your own cloud, or bring your own cloud storage, is choose the cloud storage that works maybe best for you, not only you, but also works best for your customers. So that may mean you offer a different range of cloud storage providers to your customers, whether they're price conscious, disaster, averse, and all these different types of things. So that way you can really choose what you want to provide. And the other thing is, from the CloudBerry perspective, because you're bringing your own cloud, we only facilitate the backup from the PC or the computer, the server, to the cloud. We don't actually store the data. The data does not go through our service. So the data goes directly from the client site into the cloud. So that's kind of an extra level of protection because you essentially, as the service provider, are setting all the security parameters for your customers, so you have complete control over that.
So this is something that really attracted me to CloudBerry when I first became aware of your solution. So you don't force any of the MSPs to use a set solution there. You don't force people to use a specific application or to use a specific cloud service. You cover lots of them, don't you? So the MSPs can build up this best of breed service. What does that look like in practical terms? So what are some of the MSPs that you're seeing out there? What platforms are they using, and what configurations are they using?
Yeah, so the most common platform is definitely Amazon S3. It's the biggest, it's the best in the Magic Quadrant, all those types of things. But we also have a lot of customers that use Azure, that use Google. Some of the other ones that are coming up very quickly are Backblaze, B2, as well as Wasabi. They've got some very aggressive pricing, I will say, in terms of their cloud storage. So that's kind of the layout as it is today. Although we support over 30 different clouds, those are essentially the top 5 right now.
Got it. Understood. And I want to rewind a little bit. Again, I keep going back to this traditional sort of approach towards things, but I think it's good to see where we've come from and where we are today. Traditionally, we might have seen a lot of file-based backup within MSPs businesses. Most MSPs that I speak to nowadays deploy image-based backup. How do you see the role of cloud in image-based backups?
So I think that's a great discussion, because from an image perspective, if you are doing an image-based backup to the cloud, besides cloud storage, what a lot of these cloud providers also provide is cloud compute. So if you look at platforms like Amazon, right, there's S3 for storage, and then there's EC2 for compute. So that means that you can then take that image that you've backed up of your customer's data of your customer's server in the cloud and actually spin it up as a virtual machine instance in that cloud. So we provide that today for Amazon as well as Azure. We're providing it in the future for Google as well. So for those clouds that also provide compute, that means an image now can be stored up there, and going back to the disaster, you can now spin it up as an instance in that cloud and have it up and running up there. So that's kind of, that's what we see a lot on the server side. On the workstation side, because there's still data on workstations and being stored, we still see a lot of our customers doing file-based backup. For one thing, when you're talking about client PCs, laptops, those types of things, you typically have an image for those, or you can rebuild them very quickly. You just need to get the data back. And doing a file backup to the cloud is much more efficient, uses much less bandwidth than trying to upload, the entire image or parts of the image. So that's typically what our solution providers do, is they'll do some image-based backup for their servers, and a lot of times they'll store them locally as well as in the cloud in what we call hybrid mode. But then for the workstations and PCs, they'll do file-based backup and then store that data up in the cloud.
And this is coming back to what I would say is the real world situation where one size doesn't fit all.
Exactly.
You've got clients with different budgets, you've got clients with different needs and that. So I think this is a very cool approach. What's the most common scenario you see out there? Is it sort of file-based for workstations, you say, and image-based for servers and things like that?
That's probably the most common scenario. Although even on servers, sometimes they don't necessarily care about the OS; they just care about the data. So they'll some customers will do file based on data, and not worry about the actual image. I talked to a customer a couple weeks ago who they're very unique. They're not actually a managed service provider. They're an application provider, and they provide an application to a particular subset of customers, but their application has data. And so they offer as an additional service to back that data up so that then in the event that something happens, then they can recover it for the customer. What's interesting there for them, it's a very homogeneous environment. They're backing up the data for one application. They're not protecting the entire PC. But they have hundreds of their customers that are using this service. And it's a unique situation, I think, in terms of how you can use, look at different ways of doing things depending on what type of business you're in.
Yeah, I like it. So you mentioned the magic R word there. And as the old phrase goes, a backup is only as good as the data it recovers or restores. I might have made that up, Doug. I don't know if that is an old adage, but I certainly believe it. But when we talk about restoring files, I know from being a former MSP myself, it can be a real chore. It can be, a pain in the backside, for want of a better word, can't it? So how do you make life easier for the MSPs when it comes to the restoration of files?
Well, for the first, for one thing, it's a SaaS-based application that we provide. So if you have a customer call you up and say, "Hey, I need this file," MSP can go right into the web interface and initiate the restore for that file, whether it's from a file level backup or an image level backup, and then restore that file back to the customer. Additionally, if you choose, you can also enable a customer portal. So then the customer can then actually go in and recover their own files. Most of our MSPs actually don't do that. They would rather provide the service of recovering the file themselves because they don't have to manage as many logins for their customers and all these other types of things. But that definitely is an option. And we try to make it as easy as possible to recover those individual file objects and then get them to the customer. So when they need it and get it back online.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. So some customers are going to want the ability to go and restore the files themselves. Some customers, again, we come back to this not one size fits all. It's an overriding theme here, isn't it? Some customers are not tech savvy people there.
Yeah, and that's when I talk about CloudBerry Lab, I talk about flexibility. I talk about the fact that we provide a platform that is not only easy to use, but it's also extremely flexible. Which sometimes that's great. Sometimes people are just tell me what to do. But I think the flexibility is key, especially because every business is different. What you want to offer is different. Every customer is different. So having that flexibility is really key, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, I like to put myself in the shoes of an MSP who's listening to this, or an MSP business owner, so I can hear people almost screaming out at this stage, this all sounds really, really cool, but what about making sure that end users, and let's be honest, and your internal staff, the MSP staff, who need to gain access to the data for restores and things, and the backups, can only see the data they're meant to see? How can you speak to sort of the granularity of security there?
Yeah, so excuse me. In terms of from an MSP perspective, they can go in and be able to access the data to recover on an as-needed basis because they're the MSP. They're the ones that set it up. You can assign accounts within the MSP that also have that capability. And then from the customer perspective, if you choose to set them up individually, then they could log into a portal and they would only see the data that's backed up on that's used the credentials for that account. So, they're walled off from seeing everyone else's data. They can only see their own.
Yeah. What about auditing as well? I guess that's another question there. So quite often with backups, it's almost the weakest point, isn't it, in terms of security and that? Because you can just back up an entire client site, but the security wouldn't be there. So what about auditing and things? Do you have any sort of audit trail for who's accessing files?
Yeah, so all of that is everything is logged, obviously. So whether they go in through the SaaS based, the MSP goes in through there, and we log all their actions there. as well as if the customer goes into the portal, then that information is logged too. And then there's information that's available in reports to show, hey, here's the access, who did it, and when, so you can keep a trail of what's going on.
Yeah, understood. So I'm intrigued as well, Doug. I mean, you've been in the industry for quite some time. I refer to you as a veteran there, and I say that in the nicest possible sense there. I'm a veteran as well. The MSPs that you're working with today, what sort of size are they? What type of makeup of businesses are they? What type of MSPs are they really?
So the majority are small. Mm-hmm. 1 to 5 people shops that serve, just a particular small geographic area. We have larger ones as well, that serve, larger areas. But a lot of our current customers are, the 1, 2, 3 person shops that are managing, 10, 15, however many customers, that they have and solutions that they provide. So, and then almost all of them are servicing small business customers. So, if you've got a 2-person, MSP shop, you're not going to be out there managing 5 clients, each with 20,000 users, right? You might have 10 clients, each with 15 at the most. So, that's traditionally where our sweet spot has been. But again, we do have customers, MSPs that are much larger, that service many more customers, and as I mentioned, that even use our software in unique ways that it was like, wow, I was surprised when I talked to that customer and how they're using it to back up the application data and provide a service to their customers. Yeah,
makes sense. What about integration? So you've explained the type of MSP that you traditionally work with here or typically work with. Those type of MSPs, I know from experience, tend to like the idea of best of breed. They like to get their own tools in place there. So what sort of integrations do you have with the common tools on the market, the PSA, the professional service automation and RMM tools? How does CloudBerry integrate with these tools?
So for RMM, we do have integration with both ConnectWise Automate, aka LabTech, as well as Kaseya. And that's available right within the portal to connect those together. For PSA, we have support for, in RMM going back, we have Ninja as well. And what's interesting on the Ninja side is Ninja has actually done their own integration. So if you're a Ninja customer, you can actually go in and enable the CloudBerry, and you'll see the information. You'll be able to deploy the backup and do everything right from within Ninja. So it's a bit of a different integration, where typically we integrate with RMM. Ninja said, "Hey, we want to integrate with you." So that's
interesting. Forgive me for jumping in, because I'm hearing great things about Ninja, and it looks like they're trying to integrate with as many packages as possible. What's your experience been with working with Ninja?
They've been great to work with. The integration work that they did, the back and forth has been really good. They've really just kind of launched it within the last couple of weeks. The integration, I think it might officially still be in beta. It was an alpha before that, but they're definitely getting ready to roll that out in a big way. So if you're a Ninja customer, just ask your Ninja rep, say, "Hey, I heard about CloudBerry integration. Can you tell me more?" And they'd be able to do that.
Cool. Yeah. And you also mentioned ConnectWise and some of the other bigger tools on the market.
Yeah. So for PSA, Autotask, ConnectWise, those are integrated. We haven't added a whole lot more on the PSA side, but a lot of our customers, because they're small, not all of them use PSA.
Sure.
So it hasn't been kind of a resounding. They'll use RMM before maybe they use PSA. So it's kind of we'll do what our customers want.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense, and I can see that just from the research that I've done on CloudBerry. I think would I be right in saying you've got API access there, so you can hook into other tools? So that makes sense. Yep. Rather than trying to support absolutely every one of the billion help desk packages there is out there, MSPs can actually use the API integration.
Yeah, and that so there's API integration, which Ninja used quite a bit to integrate with us. But then also from the backup client perspective, we have a very robust command line interface for that. So even if we're not integrated with your RMM that you're using, you can still use that RMM to deploy the CloudBerry client using the command line tool set. So, and we have customers that are doing that as well. You can even batch mode it and all these other types of things. So you can get pretty creative in terms of how you deploy that backup client out to your customers.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, I want to change tact a little bit. So I'd be interested in your opinion, Doug, whether you see this the same way as me. I think the role of backup has actually changed fairly significantly in just the past few months or so. Whereas before, a long-term backup would, you and I, we've been around the industry for a while. We know a long-term backup will want to keep you safe and sound. You could roll back, say, 6 months, a year or whatever. I would say now that isn't the case, because with the rise of ransomware, it means you might actually be backing up data that's already been compromised but not activated. So how are you and CloudBerry adapting to this new world of backup?
So again, backup is one of the best protections against ransomware. As long as you keep your backups air gapped, which the cloud is a great choice for that. But what we've done at CloudBerry is we've added what we call ransomware protection. And this is essentially a set of heuristics that kind of view the data as it's being backed up to look at, what has changed from the last backup and what's the percentage of changes, what kinds of changes. So that way, if those files have been modified or, those types of things, we'll set up an alert saying, hey, you may have been hit by ransomware. This is in no way or form, a replacement for your firewalls and all your other ransomware protection that have in place. It's just another checkbox to say, look, if something gets through that hasn't been detected yet, starts modifying your files on the next backup, we're going to say, hey, you might be hit by ransomware. Check these things out because it might mean that down the road you're going to have a lot of problems. So it's just an extra checkbox that we put in there for the customers because, like you said, a lot of times the ransomware will get in, won't be activated. It'll sit dormant for weeks, months, and then get activated. And then the issue is you don't know when you got infected and which backups to recover from. So it's not easy.
Super cool feature. I actually spoke to an MSP, unfortunately, just a couple of weeks ago, who got hit with just that. So the ransomware, when a client got hit with ransomware, they went to roll back to a backup and it was like, okay, a month ago, still infected. Once they restore, 9 months ago, it was still infected. So, I think this is a warning sign for most MSPs. Don't just rely on, just doing a backup in that way. Ransomware protection. They're getting clever out there, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
So talking of end users, this is a question that sort of came to me just this week. So somebody on my own team, in fact, who's fairly, I'm going to say new to the world of cloud storage, they're more used to sort of drive letters and network drive mappings. They actually got a little bit confused by the idea of accessing storage through a web browser. This is no knock on them, but it's like, it's a different concept, isn't it? I was looking on the CloudBerry website and I was really intrigued by the CloudBerry Explorer app that you provide. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the first things that CloudBerry released before backup even. And essentially, CloudBerry Explorer allows you to connect to your cloud storage buckets and present it in a Windows Explorer type interface. So, you're used to using, Windows Explorer to access your files and drive letters and those types of things and folders. That's what CloudBerry Explorer provides for you. You install it, you connect it to your different cloud storage, your Amazon buckets, your Azure blobs, those types of things. And then you see it in a familiar file folder type interface where you can copy, paste, drag, drop, all those types of things, the files and manage your cloud storage. It's not meant for Dropbox or OneDrive and those types of things. It's meant for that cloud storage, that bucket and blob type access.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And I think there's, would it be right in saying there's like a freeware version or a cost-free version of that there?
Yeah. And if you still love the map drive, we also have CloudBerry Drive, which essentially maps a drive letter to your cloud storage bucket. So
so that's very cool, because there are going to be clients out there absolutely behind the scenes. They don't really care where their data is stored. What they do care about is doing things the way they've always done things.
Yes,
in terms of drive letter. So I can absolutely see why that would be a great option for you. When it comes to the cloud storage itself, I want to throw this out there. So most of the cloud providers that I've ever spoken to, or you look at their promotional literature, they suggest that their backups are absolutely secure. And I think for the most part they are. It's certainly more secure than, as we talked about earlier, a tape being put into the secretary of the office manager's case on the way home. But I know that CloudBerry Labs provide additional encryption options for some of the backups that you put out there. Why do you recommend that MSPs and clients use additional encryption in this way?
The more you can protect the data, the better. And the last thing you want is if you're sending data to the cloud unencrypted, guess what? Someone can see it in stream and then see the data. So you definitely want to encrypt it as you're sending it. Because you're sending it up to the cloud. It might be an HTTPS connection, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything these days. So encrypting it before you're sending it is definitely ideal. And then another way to even obscure the data even more is we have an option for what we call file name encryption. So you can actually encrypt the file names. So as as we're backing the data up, we encrypt the file names. So if someone gets access in one way, they won't be able to see what the actual files are because the file names are encrypted. They won't be able to see passwords.txt as a file that was backed up from a customer's PC. So that's kind of another way to do it. And then there's different cloud storage providers. They offer then even cloud side encryption as an additional layer. Now, of course, all of this means now you're managing multiple different passwords for all these encryption settings. But I think in the end of the day, that kind of pain of managing all these different encryption passwords for encryption is definitely worth it when you're talking about your customers' data and protecting it.
Yeah, and I think those more sophisticated MSPs have already got processes in place, haven't they, for capturing passwords in PSA tools. We've got tools like IT Glue that are out there and Passport. That would be water off a duck's back to them, I think. I want to talk about another application of cloud storage, one that I don't think has been really massively adopted with the MSP space, but I think it's a huge opportunity, and that's archiving to the cloud. Now, I'm going to fully admit up front here, I don't fully understand the difference between what is referred to as hot and cold tiers of storage in the cloud. So help me out here, Doug. Educate me on how this, all of these technologies apply to long-term data storage and why MSPs should be looking at long-term data storage.
Yeah, so all these different tiers, besides being different prices, they're also different service levels. And that's typically why hot is going to be your best in terms of not only just putting the data in the cloud, but also retrieving it very quickly because it's hot, it's there, it's ready to go. You look at something like cool storage, that means you can still put the data there quickly, but when you need to retrieve it, it might take a little bit longer because it's on a lower tier of storage. It's on spinning disks and those types of things. And then you've got the actual cold storage, things like Amazon Glacier, that where you can put the data there as fast as you want, but to retrieve it, it might take up to 24 to 48 hours because it's stored on some media that Amazon isn't necessarily forthcoming about. But that's kind of the idea. And of course, each one has a different price point. Each one has different costs in terms of not just the storage space that you're taking up, but also the retrieval requests. So your retrieval request from hot is going to be a little bit more than your retrieval request from cold, and so on and so forth. But that pricing definitely helps to look at the archive capabilities. And if you've got a customer that says, "Hey, look, I want this data in hot for 30 days, and then after that, move it off to archive." Mm-hmm. And we can actually automatically do that with Amazon today, where we can we can age the data into different tiers. We'll have that capability for Azure at some point in the future. But that's kind of the idea is, hey, the customer, they need 2 weeks of fast retention, but the rest of it they want to archive, and they need to archive it for a year. So age that data off into the other tiers, store the archive for them, meet the regulatory requirements, those types of things.
That makes absolute sense. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing in terms of not just on the tiers is also the regions. And that's extremely important when we think about things like regulatory requirements. GDPR comes to mind. And
we did quite well there. We got through what was almost 30 minutes of an interview without mentioning the G word, but they were there.
Sorry. But the idea of okay, you're in the UK, you have different requirements for where your data has to live versus if you're in the United States, right? And if you're in the United States, you may not want your data in a particular region or a particular country. So you can choose, in most of the cloud services that have region support, you can actually go in and choose where you want that data to stay. If you want it across multiple data centers or just one. So again, that's the level of flexibility, and you get that. Again, with CloudBerry, because we don't own the cloud, we don't have data centers in every country, but guess what? Our cloud storage providers probably do. So you can choose the one that's going to fit within your region, within your locale, and your requirements and regulations.
That makes a lot of sense. And going back to what we were talking about, the hot, cool, and cold tiers of storage, I can specifically remember as in my MSP days, where you would go to the client and say, "Okay, we're going to back up your data. Can you tell us what's important?" And they'd say, "All of it." So you'd say, "No problem. Yep. There's the bill, all of it." And they'd go, "Whoa, can we clear some of this down?" And of course, most of the people listening to this will know that it's going to be nigh impossible to get a client to actually separate the data. But with hot, cool, and cold tiers of storage, you can actually practically just move away data that's not been accessed in the time. The client still gets to keep it. It's always there as a fail-safe, but at the end of the day, it's not costing them the earth to store that, is it?
Exactly.
Got it. Makes sense. Cool. Thank you for explaining that to me, Doug. That's something
no problem.
I hadn't understood until now. So I am very conscious of your time. I know you've got to dash off at some point. What's next for CloudBerry Labs? We've talked about a lot of the changes that have been in the world of backup over the past few months. What do you see changing in the world of backup over the next few months, years, and what are CloudBerry doing to help MSPs with those changes?
I think for us right now, I think we have an extremely good platform. It's just education and getting our name out there, getting out there and letting people know who we are and what we do and how we can help them grow their business. I think you're going to see a lot more push to the cloud, and because again, from an economical perspective, it's not as expensive as people think to utilize cloud storage. When you look at the actual data that's getting put up there and those types of things and the security. So I think we're going to see continued trend to push to more cloud storage and backups in the cloud. In terms of CloudBerry, we continue to make improvements. We've got a development staff that's working very hard, not just on our portal, our SaaS-based application that lives up in the cloud, but also in all the capabilities that we have within our backup, the backup agents, the backup software itself. So we've got a lot of new features rolling out. We've got some really cool stuff for Linux and Macintosh coming out, very soon. We've got some new stuff for Windows. So, just keep pushing, taking your customer feedback, adding that in and making better products.
And I know from that perspective, I've already heard the feedback. You're really good at listening to feedback as a company. I see the interactions you have with people on social media as well. So I guess finally, if anybody listening today wants to reach out to you personally, Doug, or to find out more about CloudBerry, where can they find you online?
So I am on social media, VM Doug, V as in Victor, M as in Mary, DOUG. That's on Twitter. So I'm definitely active on there. I'm on Instagram there as well. You can also, if you want to look at, find out more about CloudBerry, CloudBerryLab.com. So there is a lab, LAB at the end. That's our website. If you want to go to we have a forum, you can go there. I'm active on Spiceworks as well. I appear on Reddit occasionally. I don't post much, but I do lurk. Again, I'm VM Doug on there as well. So that's pretty much the easiest way to find me is just search for VM Doug and you'll find me somewhere.
Fantastic. And I was saying just before we came on air here that I'm new to your Twitter feed. I only discovered you a couple of weeks ago, and you're sharing some very, very cool stuff. So yeah, thank you for that and keep up that. Really appreciate it. So I know you've got to run off at this point. Doug, thanks so much for the time. If somebody had said to me before we started talking that we're going to talk for half an hour or so about backup, thought, really? And honestly, I could keep talking to you about backup. So I'd really love it, and I think our listeners would love it, if you could come back at another point in the future and talk about what's changed in the world of backup.
Sure, not a problem.
Fantastic. So, Doug, I'll leave it there today. And if anybody wants to catch up with anything we've talked about in the podcast today or any of the links, we'll include them in the show notes. Doug, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks for listening to Tub Talk, the podcast for IT business owners. You can find the show notes and bonus content for this interview, along with dozens of other interviews with IT business leaders over at www.tubblog.co.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, then we'd really appreciate you rating and reviewing the show over at iTunes. Every review helps us reach new listeners and helps raise the bar for success in the IT industry. In our next episode, Richard speaks with Steve Duckworth to discuss the Harmony PSA tool. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak with you next episode. Have a great day.
This show has been sponsored by CloudBerry Lab. CloudBerry Lab's managed backup service is built from the CloudBerry backup technology and designed to meet the needs of managed service providers and enterprise IT departments by providing reliable backup with centralized management and monitoring. This managed cloud backup service is integrated with Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, and almost every S3 compatible or OpenStack-based cloud storage service. With CloudBerry Managed Backup Solution, any MSP, VAR, or IT service company can rebrand and provide robust and reliable cloud backup service with remote management and monitoring. CloudBerry Managed Backup is truly cross-platform with support for Windows and Linux servers, as well as Windows, Mac, and Linux workstations. Backup to the cloud is simple with CloudBerry's broad range of support for multiple cloud storage providers, but also supports backup to local disk or NAS. You can back up data locally, to the cloud, or both for a truly 3-2-1 backup strategy. For TubBlog listeners, CloudBerry Lab is offering free rebranding for 1 year. That's a $129.99 value. Rebranding allows you to brand the backup solution as your own, meaning your customers will only see your brand, not CloudBerry Lab. To take advantage of this special offer, please visit www.cloudberrylab.com/tubblog.
Hey team, this is Richard again. Just one more thing before you take off, and that is MSP Insights. Now, every Tuesday, I share my thoughts on the business of IT with you, the managed service community. Thousands of managed service providers already subscribe to MSP Insights. It's easy to sign up, easy to cancel. MSP Insights is basically a short email from me every Tuesday without fail with advice on growing your IT business, plus cool resources I've found, discovered, or started exploring that week. It's kind of like my diary of cool things, and often includes articles or books I've read, tools I've discovered, and events I think you'd be interested in, often sent to me by my friends and Tub Talk podcast guests. So, if that sounds fun, a short tiny bite of MSP goodness every Tuesday, and you'd like to try it out, just go to go.tub.co/Tuesday. That's go.tub.co/Tuesday. Drop in your email and you'll get the very next one. Thanks for listening.